What to do? What to do?
Yeah, I'm waiting until Zoom connect YouTube.
Yeah.
Done. Okay. Yeah, it's all done. Oh, we are here. Okay. Yeah, I'm waiting until Zoom connect YouTube. Oops.
Yeah.
Done. All right. Okay. Yeah, it's all done. Oh, we are here. Okay. Yeah, I'm waiting until Zoom connect YouTube. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, good morning, our lovely friends, readers, and listeners. I'm Aldona Grupas, and I'm very happy introduce today pastor, poet, author, essayist, theologist, author, David William Parry. He has written 2 collections of poetry as well as a collection of essays. David is an international speaker and author of over 60 publications and 3 books. I hope I'm right. Good morning, dear David.
Good morning, my dear friend Aldona. It's a great honor to be speaking with you this morning. Actually, I've got 70 publications.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I say that because, of course, a lot of them are linked in with Central Asia, not so much your own wonderful country, but we'll work on that. But of course, as part of the Eurasian Creative Guild, a lot of my work was with Lithuania, the Central Asian states, and so on. So a fair percentage is to do with that region, those countries, because they're a passion of mine. So it wasn't just a pleasure talking to an old friend like you this morning. It's an honor to be talking about types of literature which people really do need to know on a wider basis.
Yeah. You have an incredibly interesting, diverse, as well as challenging background. As such, what it feels like to be on the receiving end. Indeed, you are a migrant who has lived in, sorry, David. Yes, David, I would like just to tell, a little bit make something confused.
Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah, with some. Okay, David, thank you very much, and for your introduction. If you could introduce yourself a little bit more, what on the surface you have a stable and very British background, I know. With this in mind, would you like to tell our listeners something about your own past alongside those events that started you writing poetry? I love to listen your poems.
The magic of 2 old friends talking is that nothing can go wrong. Nothing. It's just a lovely, good old chinwag, as they used to say where I grew up. I grew up in Hampshire. Gosh, where do I start? As Thomas Hardy said, I think it was one of his characters in The Mayor of Casterbridge, I'm just a humble preacher man. I suppose I've done although I've done a few extra things, I think. I have Welsh in my background. I don't identify as entirely Welsh because there's also a bit of German. Oh my God, there's a bit of Italian. My family was quite mixed, so I was quite, I'm used to different types of people with different backgrounds, different histories, different legacies, and also different classes. I mean, I'm a working class boy and very proud of it, but some members of the family were from the social elite. So I had one of those strange backgrounds where you get to meet all sorts of different people in their own worlds. And it became very important to me. I remember, I'll take a step forward, then a step back. I remember my aunt, she was very, very posh, maternal aunt, and had this huge house, this mansion in the countryside, and the whole of my little poor part of the family would spend Christmas with her in this mansion and my uncle for many years. I remember, excuse me, walking down this huge wooden staircase every Christmas morning, and there were Christmas trees everywhere in every room. And there'd be a pile of presents. And it wasn't like nowadays where, you know, it had to be expensive things, because that wasn't the idea. The idea was, are you showing your love to your family, which is something going missing nowadays? My God, where will things end? And sometimes they were ridiculous presents, like there'd be a huge puppet, that had been wrapped up with a bow, and, you know, what am I going to do with that? But it's amazing. And a book and an orange, and a piece of cake, and it was just magical. So, you know, I've always been used to meeting different types of people in their own worlds, and that's very important to me. I actually was born in Portsmouth in Hampshire, at St Mary's, the hospital. So you know, I've known medical people. That's a weird one too, like you, young lady. They've always been at the back of my world experience, which is why I've got such a huge respect for doctors, for nurses, the hours they work. Oh my God, it's even worse than being a priest. Yeah, working all day, every day. No thanks. You know, maybe sometimes, maybe not. Nobody thanks you properly. And you just think, well, you know, I'm doing it because it's good work. I'm doing it because it's me. I'm doing it because it needs to be done. So I've always admired professionals in the medical careers, you know, professionals with medical careers, always admired that. I moved to London, to bounce the story forward, in the early 1980s, which seems like another world now, since we're talking about different worlds. Britain was very different then. It was, I think, a much better place than it is now. And it was quite a shock. You know, in those days, if you were poor, like myself, and you wanted any type of future, you had to go to London. You had to go to the magic, you know, the Emerald City, and see if your dreams would come true. For me, it sort of worked. I mean, I moved there in 82, 83. Can't quite remember, because, you know, moving is a process. It's not always a clear, I'm now in a van driving to a new location. Sometimes it's a bit messier than that. Loved London in those days. I hate it now. It was clean. It was something. It was pretty, and people weren't nasty. Nowadays, it's dirty, unpleasant. Everyone's rude. If they really think becoming like New York is an advance, I can promise them it's not. I wouldn't live there anymore. I'm 40 years, Aldona, 40 years in London. No more, that's enough. But as I say, you know, with the class structure of this country, the poison of the United Kingdom, the class structure really meant you had to move there if you wanted to do anything. If I hadn't moved there, I certainly wouldn't have met wonderful people like yourself. I wouldn't have met all of my friends across the Eurasian countries, and certainly not my beloved Central Asia. You know, I've loved Russian culture. I've loved, you're not meant to say that at the minute, but I do. I love Russian culture. I love Central Asian cultures. They're exotic, they're rich, they're powerful. And it leads me to answering your final question. They are some of the reasons I started writing poetry. When I was a boy, I started writing poetry. It wasn't real poetry, you know, sentences. If you're a boy, if you're a girl, you don't write real poetry. You think it's poetry, but it's not poetry. You know, and I remember I was about 6, 7 when I started doing it. And I remember dreaming of places like Samarkand, I remember dreaming of places like Baku. I remember dreaming of places like sort of cold and snow-driven Moscow, and thinking, oh, what would it be like to go there? My poetry, like most of my work when it's not to do with Central Asia, is actually postmodern. Weirdly, I'm a postmodernist. But it started with fairy tales, it started with myths, it started with legends, and a lot of those were from that part of the world. Lithuania, I mean, they conquered the Vikings at one point. My heavens, there's a claim. Countries towards the east of Europe and beyond, which still capture my imagination. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much, David. Yeah.
Well, I've got a question for you. Because I thought the idea of today, because it's not a long show, but it's a very good show, and congratulations to you for getting this show together. I hope you invite me back soon.
Yes.
I'm an old preacher, so I have to look at what I wrote down with this. So, Miss Aldona, right? You have a diverse background, and you're a nurse. My God, a nurse who writes that's magical. That's magical. And I know, I mean, you've moved between different countries. I've explored different countries, but I haven't moved between different countries. You've done that. You've seen the cultures, you've seen the peoples, and I think you draw on those experiences in your writing. How about you? You threw the ball at me, I'll throw the ball back at you.
That's right.
What does it all mean? Who is Aldona? Where were you born? Why do you write?
Yeah, thank you very much for question. Actually, I was born in Riga, in Latvia, in Lithuanian parents. Just was life, life in Soviet Union, and we moved everywhere. My grandparents couldn't come back from Russia to Lithuania. Unfortunately, was very difficult times at time. Yeah. And my parents, they used to live in Latvia, in Riga. I was born there. Then when I was 17 years old, my parents moved to Lithuania. Already was too easy. We always dreamed about Lithuania, and we moved to Lithuania. I used to work a nurse, actually, I'm a nurse already 43 years. 43 years as a nurse. Yeah, I used to work in Lithuania. In 2005, I came to UK. I used to work first year. I had contract as care assistant because I didn't have PIN number license, nurse's license, and I sought it out. It's everything, and in 2006 I start to work as a nurse, and since 2006 I'm a nurse in UK. So I'm very proud of my profession. I'm really proud. I love my profession. Yeah. And how I start to writing. Yes, I'm a nurse and writer. That's very maybe strange, but maybe not. People write. Yeah, people can write any profession. I was chairperson of Lithuanian community in Wolverhampton. And first my book, it was about Lithuanian community in West Midlands who came after Second World War to UK, how they came. It's all stories. I met people who came in that time. It was so interesting. I was so excited to write this book. And this book, it was Project Heritage Fund. They gave me funding, and I wrote this book. It was really interesting. I wrote about 3 generations. It's people who came in 1947, other generations, them children, and third generation, it's you migrants, it's we who came to UK after Lithuania become independent. So, and the next book, of course, it was about my work, because I'm very proud. I want to share my experience. I want to share my knowledge. I want to share people's stories, everything. And it's called Nurse Give Me a Pill for Death. These words is of my one patient. And these words, when she said me this, it came through my heart, straight away through my heart, and I decided to write a book. I didn't know how I will write, but I decided, and I've done it. And about my writing, I just want to read from one my book. It's How to Be an Angel. What moved me to write books is the desire to help people see their situation in a new light and find a way out of difficult circumstances. Of course, personal development is the basis for everything. I have always been interested in how the mind works. I believe in human genius and think we are able to do much more than we think we can. It's just, I share my words to world. I would like to share my stories. Maybe somebody waiting for my stories, or stories, my friends, my patients. It's really interesting stories. It is a really interesting experience, and I think it will be interesting to read somebody, and I really have readers who read my books just and thanks and tell thank you for this what I've done. So David, I would like to ask now you, if you don't mind, has it been easy to bridge your duties as an old Catholic priest and the demands of poetry and theatre?
Well, let me say one thing. I think you're a wonderful person. I think you're an archetype. It's a very old image, the idea of the nurse, the midwife, the writer. I think in North Europe, I mean, I count Britain as North Europe. That's an old, ancient, venerable, respected image. So I think you fit that very, very easily. You know, that are you just, I don't know what just would mean. Are you just a nurse that writes? I think yes, but more, much more than that. You know, there's an archetype at work there that's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, regarding myself, excuse me, people forget there's more than one type of Catholicism. There are many types. And I don't mean churches that don't recognize each other. If I go to Rome, I am called Father, because Catholicism started in 3 places. It didn't just start in Rome. It started in Rome, it started in Alexandria, and it started in Antioch. Now, I'm not one of the people that comes from one of those other Catholic streams, although they recognize each other, they always have done. And they're actually quite different. The way they practice Catholicism is actually very different. For instance, in the Eastern stream, let's call it that for the time being, there is nothing unusual in priests getting married.